Municipal leaders are dedicated to their communities. Many describe their leadership roles as a labor of love, and it must be, because the amount of time that they devote and the passion and dedication certainly shows that they are committed to serving their communities. Our municipal leaders step up to the plate to guide their communities every day, sometimes having to make very difficult or controversial decisions. In 2023, many officials made the difficult decision to step down. They did so for a variety of reasons. Whatever motivated their decision, we here at CCM want to thank them for their tireless work, their time, and putting their hearts and souls into their communities. It has been our privilege over the years to speak with many of these outgoing officials, and in this episode we will look back at some of those interviews. We'd like to thank our sponsors at Gateway Community College and Housatonic Community College. Municipal Voice is the Connecticut Conference of Municipalities podcast in collaboration with WNHH LP 103.5 FM. I'm your host, Matt Ford. As always, be sure to give us a like and let us know what you're thinking in the comments. CCM's Municipal Voice podcast continues to present a key forum on important state-local issues. The views expressed do not necessarily reflect the consensus views of CCM or member municipal leaders.
You know, I think one of the important things about politics is knowing when to say when.
Neil O'Leary spent the last 12 years serving as the mayor of Waterbury. Prior to being elected mayor, he also served as police chief. Mayor O'Leary joined us on the podcast in 2019, along with Senator Martin Looney.
Great to be with you.
It sure is a pleasure to be with you. Thank you. We're one of the few cities that has seen increasing student enrollment every year.
Your school systems are growing.
Yes.
Yeah.
So over the last 7 years, we've taken in 1,000 new children.
Mm-hmm.
But take every town around Waterbury.
Yeah.
Their enrollment over the last 7 years has gone down between 20 and 25%.
Wow.
That's an amazing decline.
That's significant. Yeah.
It really is. It's very significant. So there's a lot of empty school desks there in those areas. So Senator and I thought it would be a good idea. You have a great plan in here in New Haven where your students go to Cheshire, Cheshire Public Schools. And there's other participating towns around New Haven that take students as well. We broached that subject, and then because of not only the influx of the Hispanic students from Puerto Rico during Maria, the aftermath of Maria, but also because of the constant growth every year. And so we're working those details out with the surrounding towns. Of course, they'd like to see how it's gonna be reflected in their budgets as well.
Obviously, yeah.
And that's an obvious. So but the good news is I think that we're open-minded and there's talking points. Under as Senator Looney points out, the elephant in every room, whether it's the smallest town in the state or the largest city, is the cost of education.
Yeah.
And the truth of the matter is the education cost sharing grant is a subject that's under discussion each and every year. And, so those, as Senator alluded to, those cities and towns with declining enrollment, and then you have other cities with, increasing enrollment. And so it's always fun to get in a room and try to figure out what's fair and equitable. And that's a lot of discussion on the Senator's side of the aisle and the House as well. It's an exciting time. I think that the Lamont administration recognizes the challenges of the urban districts, but they also are sensitive to the smaller towns and recognize their challenges as well with declining enrollments. But how does that equate to the budgetary process? There's something called the municipal budget requirement that's in place, and and it's put in place for all the right reasons, in the sense that towns just can't arbitrarily slash education budgets and have a negative impact on children. And we believe in that, by the way. We believe children should get the best education that they should get. And when towns start slashing budgets and negatively impacting a school budget, and it could negatively impact the quality of a child's education. Yeah. The other thing in the room is the special education side.
Yeah, that's a big question right there.
So in Waterbury, about 22% of our 19,000 children have been identified with some sort of special needs.
Yeah.
It's wide ranging, but it also can be extraordinarily expensive. And so we're always trying to tackle those issues, working with our legislative
delegation.
And
I know that it's an issue obviously for Waterbury, but in smaller towns it can be an even bigger issue, because a single student moving from one town to the other who's a special education student can drastically change the budget for a smaller town.
A smaller town that has one or two out-of-district placements could be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
Whereas Waterbury, New Haven, Bridgeport, Hartford, we have schools that some of them have been equipped to handle such children. And so we're actually, Senator, taking 4 special children from the town of Watertown. Makes it easier and cheaper for them to send them one town over into Waterbury, into our school, than to send them to other further away places.
We have to look creatively at some ways to deal with the property tax, because that is I think our single impediment that people cite all the time, where they cite Connecticut as being burdensome or non-competitive.
Yeah. Mayor?
Very much in agreement with Senator Looney's assessment of the property tax being the biggest challenge that we face, particularly in a city like Waterbury. Our mill rate is very, very high for a variety of reasons, a lot of which goes back to decades old challenges and issues and a lot of things that happened.
A lot of history
during those years. Having said that, the truth is that it's a big impediment for us to grow our grant list and continue on a positive economic development of people who are looking in the city, want to relocate their business to the city. The first thing they're become very much aware of is the mill rate. And we're forced and not always opposed by any stretch of the imagination to come up with aggressive tax stabilization programs, working with DECD, state agencies, and figuring out a way to get these businesses here in Connecticut and in Waterbury. So we've enjoyed some success in that, and we've also enjoyed the support from the legislature on some of these initiatives.
How does increased rail transportation affect a city like Waterbury?
It's a game changer. Yeah, a life changer. Under Governor Malloy, there was a project that was put in place for the DOT to a $70 million improvement on our single rail line. So what we did is we got approval, thankfully, and it's budgeted for resignalization on the Waterbury line from Bridgeport, but most importantly, to put sidings in.
Okay.
So the sidings, of course, we have one rail. So when the northbound train is coming, and the southbound train has to wait before it can leave until the northbound train arrives.
Okay. So
if you get a siding, one can pull off and let the other one go by.
Okay.
So we have one under construction now at the Devon station, which is really exciting. And our ridership, Senator, in Waterbury has already gone up. And our rail line is in constant need of improvement. But the fact is that a lot of these issues have been addressed through the legislative session, which we're really proud of.
So do you get a lot of commuters out of Waterbury into?
We got about 1,000 people that commute now to Lower Fairfield County, and to New York, to Manhattan, and beyond, mostly, and beyond each day. And so for quite a while, because of the faulty rail line, a lot of them would commute by vehicle or they would come here to New Haven and jump down the rail line here. Well, now we're seeing with the improved services, our train station parking lot is suddenly full, which is a beautiful thing to see.
That's what it should be.
What's even more beautiful is when we see our student enrollment growing and we do our research on where these folks are coming from. A lot of these folks are coming out of New York because of it's much cheaper, frankly, and
with
affordable.
good transportation, it's viable.
Our home prices are lower, our rents are lower, and our schools are strong. And this is what these people, why they're coming into Waterbury, because they want to provide a better opportunity for their children, which is exactly why we're all sitting here and doing everything we can to make that happen. And one of the challenges of CCM, and Senator Looney and I spoke about this a couple of years ago, is when you do have an organization that's made up of such a diverse group of very small to very large, very wealthy, very poor, it's hard to get everyone on the same page. I'm really optimistic that we have people mostly on the same page now. And it's because people have opened their eyes and recognized that we can do better. And it's not going to take away anyone's independence or autonomy. It's only going to enhance the opportunities to do better and provide better opportunities for our children through the education process as well. So I think we're in a very good place. And that's it's exciting because it took us a while to get there.
You are listening to the Municipal Voice on WNHH 103.5 FM.
Mayor Luke Bronin announced he will not be seeking re-election.
After serving 2 terms as mayor of Hartford, and also serving 2 terms as president of CCM's board, all while COVID turned the whole world upside down, Luke Bronin has announced that he will not be seeking a 3rd term. We spoke with him on the show in 2022.
Why is it important that towns and cities come together to have a voice at the Capitol kind of the way they do through an organization like CCM?
Look, I think it's always important for towns and cities to have a voice, to have a body that's representing their interest up at the state capitol. It's important every year. We say this about a lot of things now, but I think it's true that it's never been more important than it has been over the past couple of years and continues to be right now. There's there are so many ways in which this pandemic has changed the game at the local level and raised the stakes. And we're all dealing with unprecedented challenges. But we also have some unprecedented opportunities to marshal resources to tackle those challenges, and making sure that we've got a coordinated, unified advocacy effort that's representing the interests of cities and towns, whether it's on an issue as small as how to run hybrid meetings, or how to allow towns to be flexible in that regard, or whether it's as significant as the utilization of the substantial amounts of federal relief funds that have come into the state. From issues big to small, there's an awful lot at stake for municipalities right now.
There have been some proposals out there to help lower property taxes, which remain some of the highest in the country. Can you talk a little bit about why they're so high, and as a regressive tax, how can we go about reducing over-reliance on this funding mechanism?
Sure. Reducing Connecticut's over-reliance on the property tax as the source of local government funding has been a long-standing priority for CCM, appropriately so. We are one of the most reliant on property taxes in the country. Property taxes really are the only meaningful source of locally generated funds that municipalities are allowed to tap. And that's unusual. In a lot of states, municipalities have a dedicated share of other revenue streams, like a dedicated share of sales tax revenue, or a dedicated share of income tax revenue, or they have the ability to impose those other forms of revenue raising within their own jurisdictions. In Connecticut, municipalities are not allowed to impose any other tax. Obviously, there are modest fees that are imposed in certain circumstances, but the only large revenue raiser that municipalities in Connecticut are allowed to use is the property tax, and that leads to all kinds of distortions and all kinds of inequities. When you have towns that are vastly more well endowed in property wealth versus others, you create massive gaps. And a few years ago, the Boston Fed did a study of what they called the need capacity gap. And what it found was that some municipalities in Connecticut have not enough capacity, not enough grand list value, taxable property to meet the needs in that community. Whereas other communities have far more than enough to meet the needs, and that, of course, creates vast disparities in property tax rates between communities. That in itself, I think, is a problem. But there are other ways in which the over-reliance on the property tax is a real problem. Take a small town that wants to preserve its local character, but may be incentivized or indeed required by revenue demands to allow for other forms of development of big box stores, development of commercial development that fundamentally eats up the open space that they prize. It forces decisions that may not be in communities' interests. So there are so many ways in which the over-reliance on the property tax is damaging. Obviously, I sit here as not just the president of CCM, but as the mayor of the city of Hartford, where I've seen some of the profound consequences of this need capacity gap. In the city of Hartford, you have a very small taxable property base. That's partly because of the amount of property that is non-taxable, state, college, hospital property, and only partially reimbursed by the state payments in lieu of taxes. It's partly because the city got into a vicious cycle decades ago, whereas the mill rate went up, more and more properties changed hands from taxable for-profit hands to non-taxable non-profit hands, further degrading the grand list. And then you can also just get distortions as the property tax rises. The value ultimately is impaired by that, and we see that as well. So there's just countless ways in which an over-reliance on property tax is not good policy. And let me close on the one that you mentioned, which is the fact that it is extremely regressive, right? That the property tax falls on property owners regardless of their income. And all over the state, you've got an awful lot of families, an awful lot of seniors who own a home as their sole significant asset, don't have significant sources of income, and yet they are taxed on the basis of the value of that asset. And that also is something that should trouble all of us.
What do you think the state could be doing to help towns fight the opioid epidemic?
Well, here again, let me just say, I think from my conversation with the Lamont administration that this is an area that they are very eager and willing to partner with towns to tackle. And also, let me just back up by saying, one of the things that CCM has done over the recent months has been to coordinate with the Attorney General's office in making sure that every Connecticut municipality, as many municipalities as possible, participated in the national opioid settlement, which will bring significant resources back to Connecticut and to Connecticut towns to invest in combating the opioid epidemic, whether through prevention efforts, treatment efforts, any number of ways of investing to combat that epidemic. As you probably know, the opioid epidemic has hit every community across the state and across the country in devastating ways. And in my city, we were hit in a truly devastating way a couple of weeks ago when we lost a very young boy, a 13-year-old boy, 7th grade, to fentanyl poisoning. And I think that raised awareness for a whole lot of people who weren't otherwise focused on this, and it gives us, I hope, that renewed sense of mission to tackle this epidemic with the comprehensive approach it demands. And I think what CCM is saying is that it really does need a comprehensive approach. It requires, yes, a law enforcement approach, but also a treatment approach, expanding access to medication-assisted treatment, expanding access to residential treatment programs, expanding education and awareness efforts, not just in our schools, but throughout our communities. So the increased harm reduction work to make sure that we are preventing overdoses. There are so many different fronts that we've got to fight on. And I think one of CCM's views that we'll be advocating this year is that that also means that there should be some central point of coordination, much as we saw with the coronavirus pandemic, some central point of coordination to help bring all of the different players and all the different partners who have to be a part of that effort together and make sure that we are really tackling this on every front.
One issue related to transportation is the Transportation Climate Initiative. What is the preference of municipalities in Connecticut when it comes to programs like TAR and LOCIP that already exist?
Well, so you mentioned TCI, Transportation Climate Initiative. I will say, I personally have been a vocal advocate for TCI since it was first proposed. As you know, I was not able to be at the annual convention this past year. I had to have a surgery, and so I was out of commission. But CCM adopted unanimously a position in support of the Transportation Climate Initiative, which is, I think, a powerful statement that our towns and cities recognize both the urgency of taking action on climate and taking climate stewardship seriously, and also recognize the need to make new investments in transportation and all modes of transportation, focusing in particular on increasing bike and pedestrian infrastructure, making sure that we're investing in EV charging infrastructure, all of those changes that would allow us to shift away from our dependence on cars as the only way of getting around, which is ultimately a hugely important part of decarbonizing. So I think it's a really remarkable, in some ways quite unexpected, but I think important statement from Connecticut municipalities that they support the Transportation Climate Initiative, recognizing the urgency and importance of taking action both on climate and on investments in multimodal transit and other forms of greener infrastructure development at the local level.
You are listening to the Municipal Voice on WNHH 103.5 FM.
Sometimes there is a time to go.
After mulling over it for months, West Haven's Mayor Nancy Rossi making the decision not to run again.
Mayor Nancy Rossi has served the city of West Haven for 3 terms. She has announced that she won't be seeking re-election this year and is looking forward to retiring with her husband. We spoke with the mayor in this interview from 2020. Mayor Rossi, thanks for being here today.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm really excited about being here and talking about our wonderful city, West Haven.
I know West Haven and New Haven, a lot of other towns, have a growing portion of property that's non-taxable. You have UNH in town. Yale's got a presence in town. There's the VA. Do you feel like the state could be doing more to provide its towns and cities with proper funding in programs like the payment in lieu of taxes pilot that would offset some of these exempt properties?
I believe they should do more because once again, it's very difficult, especially for a tier 3 municipality, which is what financially, to be able to meet our obligations. So basically what we lose in the pilot funding, if we don't get enough of it, we have to pass on to the taxpayers. And so I am hopeful in the future that they'll come up with a different formula and give myself, and we're not the only municipality like this, there's others around us. When you have a lot of tax exempt property, you control over, if the state only allows X amount of dollars, you have to make it up elsewhere. And that is a difficult and daunting task.
Part of the MARB agreement is having 5-year plans. And a big goal for West Haven is economic development. In the 60s, 70s, 80s, there's a lot of pushback over some of the beachfront developments that were happening at that time that could have changed the character of the beachfront. But there's a few places that have sat dormant for a little while now, like Chick's on Beach Street, supermarket around the corner. Do you see these areas as ripe for development?
I do see them as ripe for development, especially with Beach Street. We have started the project down by our water pollution control plant to raise the road. One of the problems there, and it affects public safety, is it's a flood zone. Yeah. So we've had the 2 superstorms that came in and really demolished that area. People are reluctant, especially developers, to say, well, hey, I'm going to come there and put that in when the next storm could be right around the corner. Yeah. So we were able to secure funding both on the state level through some bonding and also on the local level it is from the city of West Haven, some bonding. We started phase 1, which is water pollution control, and that is, they're raising the road as we speak. And my understanding is that project started approximately a month ago and is scheduled to finish early, that it will definitely be finished before the end of the year, because I talked with the engineer just the other day. So that's a big deal, along with we have now secured money, again, through the bonding commission through the state of Connecticut to complete phase 2 and phase 3. So that will take the road higher and bring it up to the Debonair Hotel, where the Debonair Hotel is. Okay. So I do believe that once the developers see that something really is happening to correct the flood zone and also the public safety issue down there, I do believe we're going to have a lot of interest. And I very much believe we have the most beautiful beach in Connecticut, and I would like to showcase it. And other beach fronts have, whether it be shops, whether it be a conference center, a hotel, whatever it is, we are hoping and planning on developing that area. And we're not going to violate any of the land trust stuff, because I know that that group worked very hard in that, and people don't realize that's a small part, and it's not the whole beach or anything like that. We have plenty of room for development, and we are going to utilize that and go forward with it.
So in Allingtown section of West Haven, UNH has seen a lot of growth over the last decade, but only recently have some new businesses kind of come in surrounding that. Have you talked with UNH and worked with them on any projects? Is there anything in the pipeline for the area in the future?
Well, we did start talking to them before COVID, but unfortunately when COVID hit, and of course all of their students had to go home, we haven't done much down there, but we will continue talks, because there are some different areas that I think we can partner with and work together. I have met with President Kaplan on several occasions since I've taken office, but I do believe there's opportunity there, especially with the Atwood Parkview. Capetta's has done a major renovation on their business. And so it really is night and day from where it was just a few years back. And I want to continue that growth in Allentown so that the taxpayers there get some tax relief as well. Because again, economic development growth is the key to, alleviating a lot of these tax increases.
Yeah. You mentioned some solar projects, and renewables are kind of the future, it seems like, in a lot of places. How are those projects proceeding? Are those on city properties? Were there grants? Or are you working with a company? How does that work?
Actually, all of what you just said. Some are going to be on some of the Board of Ed properties, which are city properties as well. We've done some grants, and we are facilitating wherever we can. I know the city council, our sitting city council, is very, very big on using solar, and it makes a lot of sense. Plus, we not only reap the benefits of all of it. However, we also get paid for some of it, so we will get some revenue out of it.
So it makes financial sense as well as environmental sense.
Right, both. It's
Which is always nice.
Yeah, always nice.
Makes it a lot easier to decide. How do you feel about the future of West Haven?
I feel West Haven has a bright future. We have a very resilient group. Westies, we all stick together, and even though West Haven, the way it is, may get a little, controversial here and there, but we all stick together, and I think we have a resilient group. I think we've weathered the worst part of the storm, knock wood, and all of that, because again, COVID did set us back. I know COVID did set us back some, and I'm not going to that it absolutely did. But that being said, I'm hoping that, we continue the progress we've made with not only the COVID and keeping safe, but with economic development and raising revenue in different ways outside of the box rather than just raising taxes.
You are listening to the Municipal Voice on WNHH 103.5 FM. John Elsesser became Coventry's town manager on May 3rd, 1988, making him currently the longest tenured town manager in the state. He has also served many years on the board of CCM. He's ready to retire, but he isn't ready to give up on his passion for helping others. We spoke with him in 2020 about microgrids. You have a microgrid project going on that involves the Pura. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. It's probably one of the most complicated things I've done in my career. Working actually with a CCM partner, we went out and got a microgrid grant through DEP for $4 million. So the grant actually goes to the partner who will design and build the system. So we've actually been working on implementing it and the design for it for almost a year and a half to 2 years now. But the plan would be that they would install a microgrid at our high school, which would be made up of combined heat power generators. So they would fire up with natural gas, generate electricity, and we would actually buy electricity from them under a power purchase agreement at no higher than current market rates. And then if the power went out, we would be able to run on that for a minimum of 14 days.
So you could just switch to battery power or whatever, and you'd be good to go.
Well, it generates power.
On its own,
so as long as we have natural gas coming, we would have power. And it's going to be combined with solar and batteries. And the batteries will allow us to get into demand management. So we'll rid ourselves of demand charges, especially at our high school. When you turn the football lights on, your rate goes up for 12 months. But it's really exciting because it will give power for our high school, our middle school, our town hall, our school administration building, our radio tower, and emergency management EMD center. 80 units of elderly housing that have electric heat. So that's kind of what people ask, what do town managers lose sleep over? 100 seniors living in houses without electric heat during the winter.
That's not something you want in the news, certainly.
And it would also tie in our police station and our fire station. So it's
That sounds like a
a
large
broad
percentage of the
area.
town stuff there.
So our core essential services, we kind of joke the only thing that we don't have is a bank and a grocery store. Our fueling station for the town vehicles is also at the firehouse. So we'll be able to provide fuel for our police fire trucks and snowplows if it's a winter storm.
Yeah.
So it's exciting, very complicated, and we're having issues. It's a great state program for resiliency, and we're into resiliency. We're a silver city on that CCM co-op collaborative program.
Yeah.
It's not $4 million of support. Sounds like a lot.
Yeah.
But we're finding that most of the money is going to end up going to Eversource.
Okay.
For the switch gear, and we're right on the brink where one of our requirements are that we don't pay more than we're paying now, and we're having difficulty doing that because the police and fire station are across the street from us.
Okay.
And under PURA and state law regulations, you can't cross the road. It's kind of like
a
I guess
chicken?
you can't be a chicken. Why does a chicken cross the road? You can't bring power across the road without violating Eversource's, or if you're in UL territory, their franchise. So towns can, but we don't want to own the system because we want to just buy power. We don't want to run it. So we may have to look at that. But right now we're looking at seeking some relief through PURA to allow us to come up with a way to either have a little bit more subsidy through the PURA public safety requirements, to have them subsidize the cost of running underground wires between our police and fire station and across the road, or some other type of relief. So it comes down to, again, the state has a brilliant program for sustainability for microgrids, but they may need to add money or change the rules slightly, because last round, the fourth round of this program, they granted 9 grants. And at this point, only 3 of them are still alive. So it's great to have a program, but we're asked that DEP and PURA look at the legislative intent was to make these programs work. And when you have that type of dropout rate, there's something seriously wrong.
Yeah.
And we're still one of those 3 that are alive, but the numbers still have to work. So we're trying to, come up with ways to make it well known that it's a brilliant program and should be carried forward to a 5th round, especially if towns have dropped out or private sectors have dropped out. But they got to look at how to make the program work. And I know in some of the other rounds, they've had people drop out for the same reasons. There just has to be a little bit more either price reduction on Eversource, or some rules changes to allow the private sector to maybe run those wires.
Yeah.
But so as I said, it's extremely complicated, and we have an application in PURA, and hopefully another 70, 80 days we'll have an answer. They've been good to work with, and we understand they have their required processes.
Yeah.
And we actually had to ask for a 90-day extension, so the delay is not them. It's us trying to redesign, re-engineer the program to make it cost effective and work. But exciting program for other people to look at, but extraordinarily complicated.
So there's potential there, but it's not just an easy $4 million that you're handing over.
And we're using, again, a CCM partner, ECG, to be our technical advisor with the private company, and attorney Paul Michaud, who's also been involved with CCM programs, to oversee the utility regulatory process.
Excellent.
And those are done actually at no cost to the town.
We'd like to thank our guests for their years of service to their communities, and we wish them the best of luck in their next chapters. We'd like to thank our sponsors at Gateway Community College and Housatonic Community College. Learn more at gatewayct.edu and housatonic.edu. The Municipal Voice is a co-production by CCM and WNHH 103.5 FM. Kevin Maloney is our executive producer, Christopher Gilson is our producer, Harry Draws is on the boards, and I'm Matt Ford, your host. Be sure to check out our Facebook page and give us a like, and watch out for our CCM chat series on our YouTube page.